Mark, welcome to the Z Marketing Podcast. Thank you so much for coming back again.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a while when you were on here talking about known and personal branding. It feels like just yesterday, and then I got super excited. I saw that you came out with a book belonging to the brand, which I will link up in the show notes, where you talk about the final frontier in marketing really being all about community. I think you actually say it's the last great marketing strategy.
Yeah,
Could
a rather bold statement.
Oh yes, if there ever was one. And I definitely it piqued my interest because I've been having like a similar kind of suspicion as I think many marketers have over the past few years. Could you please elaborate for my listeners, viewers, why you believe community holds this pivotal role in today's marketing landscape?
Yeah, well, there's a really a lot of reasons, and if you look at the trajectory of my career, at least the last 10 or 12 years, I've been thinking and researching and writing a lot about how do we become the signal against the noise in this very noisy, busy world that's becoming even worse with AI now? I saw a statistic, Zev, the other day that more than half of the content on the web has been created by AI. And if you think about what is brand marketing, to me, it's a very simple definition. It's an emotional expectation. So it's different from performance marketing, which could be SEO or Google Ads. When you're working on brand marketing, you're trying to create an emotional connection, meaning between you and your customers. And, that could lead to you being top of mind, top of heart. It can help you stand out in this very, very crowded world. It can help you become a beacon, a source of meaning and truth when people don't know where to turn. So the ultimate goal is to create this emotional connection. So most businesses today are on social media, and the opportunity to create a real emotional connection is weak. Now, there are exceptions, but generally social media, and it's changed a lot. I mean, it's become really quite a toxic place, a lot of the time. And but social media is ephemeral. Maybe you see it, maybe you don't. If I made an announcement on Twitter or LinkedIn and said, "Hey, everybody, I have a new book out," how many books would I sell? Not very many. Just because someone likes you, follows you, it doesn't mean they're going to open their wallet. It doesn't mean they know
Right, as
you
you
very
you've
well.
said in the past, and it always stuck with me. It's a like is or a follower is a weak
Yeah,
relational link.
yeah, very good. Good memories of.
Thank you.
Uh, so now, the beauty of social media is that it provides reach. We can connect to people that might have never heard of us before. That's probably how you and I first got connected. Now, if we can take those people and bring them to our content, aha, now that creates a stronger bond because people are opting in. They're saying, Zev, I love what you do. I'm going to subscribe to your podcast. It's all right for you to connect to me on a regular basis because I believe in you and I like you. So when people subscribe to our blog or a podcast or video or Instagram in a virtual way, they're saying it's I like you. I want to hear more. Now, that's where most businesses stop. And the ultimate connection is in community, is in a brand community. So if we're trying to create this emotional connection, this emotional expectation, why wouldn't we, you know, move to community? Why wouldn't we look at community, especially now when so much of the world is lonely? So much of the world is longing to belong. And through the research that I went through to write this book, one of the most interesting and profound things that I found is that when people belong to a community and they begin to know each other, they begin to become friends and they begin to collaborate, a couple of things happen. Number one, that that friendship and goodwill transfers to the brand. So it suggests that a marketing strategy in a community should be not to make people like you, but to help people like each other. Because the other thing that happens is if you're in a community and you're engaged and you visit there every day or every week, then if you leave that community, that means you're going to leave the brand and you're not going to leave your friends. So literally, you belong to the brand.
That is a really, really awesome and cogent like way to lay out the thesis of belonging to the brand. Really great book, holding up again. And I think that you're super right about people feeling loneliness, anxiety, being kind of isolated. Maybe some of it's a result of the spillover from COVID. I also actually, interestingly enough, I read your book right after I read the bestseller Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which I don't know if you read that book, but the juxtaposition was pretty powerful
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
yeah, he's
They're
talking
like
about
they're like bookends.
exactly. So
Yeah.
he's talking about a lot of the problems going on, and you're talking about the positive ways or the things we could do digitally to create more community and kind of reverse some of these negative trends. So, extremely valuable. Now, you identify connection, purpose, and relevance as essential qualities of a successful brand community. And as you said, if people associate those kinds of things in their lives with your brand, they're not going to want to leave because the brand community is like a part of their community, their friendships, things like that, their network. How can brands effectively cultivate these qualities to foster a thriving community? And I know that in the book you mentioned some examples, but briefly, I guess, like how could brands uh, cultivate some of these more communal qualities?
Yeah, so let's go through each of them. And first of all, I want to emphasize that um you might think, "Oh, to start a community, I've got to attract 500 people, or 100 people at least." But what I found, Zev, is that just about every community I studied started with like 5 people, including arguably the biggest community in the world, Twitch, started with 5 people.
Wow.
And so it's like if you can find critical mass of people so let's go through each of those qualities you mentioned. So, and this is really important because a lot of people say, "Oh, I have a blog community. I have an Instagram community," but they don't. They have an audience. And that's fine. That's great. I mean, I have an audience on my blog. I have an audience on my podcast, but it's not a community. And here's the difference. So number one is this idea of communion. The people know each other. The people who read my blog, they don't know each other. They're there for me. It's one-way communication. But in a community, it's like a neighborhood, right? People chat, they talk, and they debate, and they laugh and they collaborate. I mean, it's just like one of the most exciting things. I've had my community for a little over about 3.5 years now, and two of the people in the community just started their own business together. And I mean, what joy that brings me, right? That, I help make this connection and nurture these relationships, and they've started this business together. And that's just so exciting to me. So, but the prerequisite is you got to know each other. Now, the second prerequisite or the difference between a community and an audience is that there's some shared purpose. So there's an intersection between the purpose of your company or brand and the purpose of your customers. And the example I usually give, which seems like it's pretty easy to understand for most people, is Patagonia.
Mhm.
Patagonia is known for environmental responsibility and responsible outdoor recreation. I mean, it's just no question that's what they're about. Now, it just so happens that there's a large number of people that share that purpose. And so I have a friend, a very, very good friend of mine. He only buys Patagonia clothes. They are not the most beautiful clothes. They are not the most expensive, inexpensive clothes, but he buys them because he belongs to that brand. He shares that purpose so strongly. So that's really the tie-in. How can you have a bigger impact on the world if your customers come along? How can you help your customers grow, learn, thrive in a way that also helps your company or your brand? So that's number two. Number three is this you mentioned is this idea of relevance. And it's super powerful. So whenever you create a business strategy or a mission statement, more or less, that's kind of carved in stone. It's bolted to the center of the earth. You don't change it every year. But in a community, it sort of morphs and flexes. It's like this blob that's moving forward in this herky jerky way. And so the destiny of the community isn't really determined by the brand or the marketing plan. It's determined by the community.
Mhm.
And that like requires a whole new mindset for a lot of leaders who want to control, they want to be in control of the brand, they want to be in control of the message. But I'll give you just a little example of the power of this. So when I started my community, 3.5 years ago, I thought, well, if someone's in my community, they're going to be interested in the things I'm interested in. So I'm going to have a little chat room about writing. I'm going to have a little chat room about personal branding. And when people started to join the community, they
Oh,
said,
sorry. Was this on like what's that
Discord.
Discord? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And you need to join it. You should join it. It's
definitely.
it's 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 open for everybody. It's open to everybody. Um, So so people started coming in and they said, "Look, Mark, if we're going to learn about the future of marketing together, we need to be talking about the metaverse. We need to be talking about AI. We need to be talking about Web3." So they led me. They led me. And today, the little chat rooms I've started, those are the loneliest places in the whole community. And so
Funny.
because they're leading me, Zev,
Right.
they're teaching me. They're making me more relevant. They're making me a better teacher, a better writer, a better speaker. And so think about scaling that for a brand. If you've got people from all over the world saying, this is what we want to see next, this is what interests us, let's go here. Wow. I mean, what could be better for a brand?
Absolutely. I think it was a great quote somewhere about how from a great teacher who said, "More than I've taught my students, I've learned from my students," something like that. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, yeah, and I really appreciate how you just outlined and also in the book the difference between an audience and a community, because so many people, even people in marketing, even influencers, do not get that. Oh, I have a big community. Look how many followers. And the truth of the matter is, I look at it more like you can have your followers or your friends. You can have a lot of friends, but when your friends become friends with one another, that's when you have the beginnings
Yeah,
of a community. And that's
absolutely.
when
Absolutely.
that's when it gets interesting and fun, and there's
Mhm.
more opportunities. So in that vein, um, a lot of companies can get of course, a little bit nervous when they hear talks about community, branding, as you said, giving up control. Let's start on that for a moment. If you're making a community, which I also think, it's not just an audience. It's also not just a group. Like people think they have a community because they have 200 group members in a Facebook group. that's also not a community if they're not talking to each other and connecting in any significant way. Um, how can you take a bunch of kind of strangers that are in a room, just a bunch of collection of strangers, and turn them into a community where they have ties to one another without losing control of the focus or of maybe like why you're building this, like in a business sense?
Sure.
Which a lot of leaders, especially coming from the traditional world of
Hmm.
sales and marketing, may be hesitant to do.
Sure. Well, there's uh, three, maybe four critical things that you need to do. Number one, the place has to be safe. If people feel intimidated or threatened in any way, they're going to leave. It's not going to work. The second thing that's important is people want to feel that they're seen and they're heard. And so this is important for me as a leader of the community to acknowledge people, and that sort of dispenses status. They say, oh, I make a difference here. I'm seen, people appreciate me here. Now the third thing is, especially at the beginning, you've got to create a reason for them to be there, and at the beginning, and when it's small, that's going to have to be on you. You've got to create a reason for them to be there. It could be a conversation, it could be a piece of content, it could be an event. In my community, I bring in guest speakers. So, like, we've had very famous people like Philip Kotler and Robert Cialdini come into my community and spend an hour with us on Q&A, and so that people get excited about that. We've had um, We've had events, we've had parties in the metaverse. We've had art shows in the metaverse. We've displayed our AI art in the metaverse, right? How fun is that? And so those shared experiences build the relationships, and you have fun and you laugh. Now, most communities, if it's an online community, also have an offline component. If it's an offline community, then you'll probably have an online component to keep things going in between the meetings. So, I've got like this global community. It's hard for me to get people together, but whenever I go to a big city and we can gather, we'll have an event. We'll have a meeting, we'll have a dinner, we'll have some fun together. I did have a
Like a
party at
meetup.
my, we have a meetup, yeah. We did have a party at my house last summer. I said, hey, anybody who wants to come, just come. And we had people there from all over the world.
I won't miss the next one.
Yeah. So that was really fun. So those are really the fundamental ways to start. Now, if you lay that groundwork, something magical happens, because when people start to care about the community, then they want to help. And this is another thing that's different from traditional management. So people in my community, they'll say, "Well, I have an idea. I want to start a monthly chat about artificial intelligence." Okay, great. Why don't you do it? And they'll say, "Really? You I could do that?" Sure. Now, in a company, nobody volunteers for anything. But in a community, when people care about it and they feel part of it and they want it to move ahead, I've never had somebody say no. And once they take on that task, they own it.
So
They
they feel
love
a sense
it.
of ownership, exactly.
Owners, they're proud of it.
Yeah.
And it becomes part of their identity, which is what community is all about, right? From a psychological standpoint.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I mean, it's a magical thing. So in my community this week, we had four or five different events, and I only organized one of them. We had one of our guest speakers come in, and I hosted that. But the other three, it was somebody else. So most of the things in the community, they have been deputized to run the community, and now we've got lots of reasons to engage. And so it's an awesome thing to be part of.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. And I think that when it comes to, building a community, like you said, a lot of it is based on identity. It becomes a source of meaning for people, a great unifier, as you mentioned before. It should be some kind of common purpose. And I guess if you're directing it from a branding, a marketing point of view, you hope that shared purpose has something to do with your
Well, and
brand or
yeah, and let me come back to that because
yes.
that's a very important point. So as the company, the brand, or the individual who's responsible for this community, you you define the riverbanks. You define what's inbounds and out of bounds, right? So I'll give you an example. Um, my community is about looking forward, about what is the future of marketing? How do we stay relevant in this crazy AI world? And somebody came in. She said, and someone said, "Well, I'd like to start a channel where we solve like everyday problems. Like I'm having problems with my email. Can someone fix it?" And I said, "That's a really good idea, but it doesn't belong in this community because I don't want to fix everybody's problems. We want to the river banks are the future of marketing." So, what I would suggest you do is I think this is a really good idea. Start your own community on that topic.
Mhm.
So she did. And she's still, a very active member of my community. But, I encouraged her that it is a good idea. So as the brand, you are still responsible for where this thing is gonna go. You can't relinquish that. Now people give me ideas of new places they want to experiment. Hey, that's great. Let's do it. We're doing tons of experiments. We're teaching each other in the community, and that's the culture that I want in the community.
Right. So you set some parameters, and obviously moderate to some degree, and that makes a lot of sense. Um, and when you're, kind of, I think there's been a big shift over the last like 50 years from broadcast media, which is like a one-way conversation, to social media, which is a two-way conversation. But then going deeper and making a community leading to virtual or in-person meetups, other things. I wanted to get your take on something related to, I guess, distribution. I focus a lot on the things that you say in the book are kind of going by the wayside, not necessarily, but advertising, SEO, things like that. Of course, we're always evolving and trying to bring in, I've always been a social first kind of agency, but and content focused, but what I'd love to kind of explore with you is it's no longer just about content. It's now about real, not even just conversation, real meaningful connection, two-way connection, um, going beyond just content and conversation. So, is there any uh, purpose to building, people say building on social media platforms, like we all know what's going on with TikTok right now. Um, it could be a mistake because you're building on rented land. Um, when you talk about community, how important is it to take people off the big platforms and into kind of your owned channels, like your own website or a Discord or something, versus, having it live on various social platforms?
Right. Well, I mean, I'll answer that, but before I do, I want to just tease out a very keen observation that you made about sort of the evolution of media, gone from broadcast to gathering and having discussions on social. But what's really happened is that we've gone from like a publishing model, and then we've moved to social media, like a conversation model. But in a way, social media has become a publishing model again. It's,
Hmm.
it's people are afraid to have conversations. That's what's driving community,
Yes.
right? Because nobody wants to say anything on social media anymore. But in a community, of in a safe community of like-minded people, that's where the conversations are happening, right?
Yes.
And so I have a friend who really kind of even gave me a view of the next evolution, and it might even be here now. And she said, community is the new media. She
Hmm.
said, I mean, what's the chance that you could get in, the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or ABC News or whatever? Probably nothing unless you commit a crime or something, right? Um, but what's the opportunity you could be in a community of 50,000 people who are vitally interested in you and what you do? And then if you create something in that community that's fantastic and a great story and people are excited about it, they're going to share that outside the community, right? So community in a way might be one of the most effective media channels that there is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of breaking that third wall. And like you said, yeah, people are afraid of getting canceled. People are afraid of arguments. People are afraid of someone digging up something from 10 years ago. A community is where people can engage in like a safe space with other like-minded people and have more of the conversations. I remember as long ago as about 8 years ago, they were saying Gen Z was going more in Snapchat and like private stuff, whereas millennials were still doing everything public. So I think that shift has definitely
Hmm. Hmm.
grown. Um, and now, when you are, in one of these communities, how, as it from the branding and marketing standpoint, um, I think, and you can tell me if you think differently. I think there's still always going to be a place for advertising and things like that, in as much as it could maybe drive people into these communities, expand reach. Like you said, a lot of these big platforms where people they've become more of pay to play and things like that. Is the focus now probably getting people into that community? And then once they're in that community, how do we um, drive that conversation or measure success that may tie back to bottom lines and please, uh, corporate or CFO?
Sure. Well, that's never going to happen. um, well, there's a lot of depth to that question, and I do agree with you that there will always be a place for advertising. There will always be a place for promotion, especially if we need to, launch something new, if we need to teach people, about a new way to use our product or something. I mean, advertising is great. If I have a brand new product that I'm launching, would I rather start a community or have an ad on the Super Bowl? I would rather have an ad on the Super Bowl, if that's a possibility. I mean, community, it creates depth, but it takes a long time to get there. And
Yep.
it takes patience, it takes work. And a lot of people have told me, oh, community, it takes so much work. And my response is, what marketing today isn't work?
Exactly. It's much more time consuming than it ever was, but
What
sometimes less.
marketing
Yeah,
today isn't work? So
right.
at least let's do something that works.
Yeah, exactly,
You know?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've said this to people too, like arguably it's less money than it was in the past, but it's more time. Depending. I mean, now if you're depends how much you're putting into like Google Ads or whatever, but in a lot of ways it's become much more time consuming. But sometimes there are underpriced ways of getting attention that didn't exist
Yeah.
uh 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Um
And I want to get back to your question about measurement
yes.
because I mean, this is something I address in every one of my books, whatever the topic is. And so here is like the glorious thing about brand communities. So so most businesses don't have a brand community. Most startups do. Young companies today, they realize we need uh, we need advocates, we need input, we need people to test this, we need money. So most startups start with community as their marketing strategy, but a lot of companies still don't. And the brand communities that do exist, 70% of them are for customer service. You
Hmm.
have problems with your software. Oh, go to our community and they'll solve your question. There's nothing wrong with that. And the value of that is easy to measure because you're avoiding a cost with a live person solving somebody's problem. Now, here's the huge opportunity. I've got a chapter that lists like 15 different distinct, powerful, measurable values that are mostly just being overlooked by companies today. And, you know, uh, uh, to me, the most important one is brand advocacy. I mean, if you're probably familiar with the Edelman Trust Barometer. It's this research that comes out. I think they're up to 70 countries all around the world, and they look at, what do people trust? And the trust in businesses and advertising has declined 15 years in a row.
Hmm.
But we trust each other. So if you have someone in your business, in your community, and let's say they give you an idea, and this is a very popular way to use communities, by the way. New product development. Look at what Nike's doing. Look what IKEA is doing. Look at what Lego is doing. Look what Coca-Cola is doing. They've got community of people developing new products. And like if you
Like co-creating, like, right?
co-creation,
Yes.
sure. Because I mean, if you have people who love and obsess about your product, they're going to have the best ideas because they know it better than anybody. They use it, more than anybody. So, I mean, just a favorite case study I have is you know, you, almost all the new products coming out by Lego is being created by their community.
Hmm.
And if the community develops the idea, they get some of the profit from the
Wow.
thing.
They're
So,
like
okay.
making a partner. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, there you got product development. That's something that can happen in a community. What about, we talked about relevance. We talked about the community leading you to what's next. It's first party, first hand data collection from people, arguably all over the world. At least, my community is all over the world. Uh, and I think the most important thing, as I started to mention, is brand advocacy. So, I mean, if people don't trust your ads, if people, most people don't even see your ads because they're watching streaming media, or they're watching ad-free YouTube, or they're listening to an audiobook or Spotify, they're not even seeing your ads. If they see them or hear them, they don't believe them. But we believe
Hmm.
each other. So if you have people in your community posting stuff, talking with their friends saying, "Oh my gosh, I just got this big idea from this community. I just got this award from this community. I just helped develop a product in this community." Um, you know, Nothing is better. That's the best advertising. It's the most unadulterated, trusted form of promotion you could ever have. When people's friends and family are saying, "I love this thing." So there's like I said, I list carefully 15 different benefits in this book that are all measurable and all contribute to the ROI of the company.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So co-creating, crowdsourcing
Yeah.
ideas,
Brand
generating
advocacy. Yeah.
loyalty.
Those are just a few.
Yes, absolutely. And just sort of to close out, I think this is kind of a broad subject, but as you said, trust is at an all-time low of advertising and media, of our institutions in general. People are sort of tuning things out and have so many different platforms and channels fragmenting attention. And now I think trust in influencers has waned as well. And now we have AI that will slowly probably take the place of humans in all endeavors that were once a human thing. So I think community, as you said, is not just the last great hope for marketing. It might be the last great hope for humanity. Uh, it's
Maybe that'll be my next book.
yeah, sure. And you know, it's like the last form of human-centric marketing. How do you think that community will hold up in, you know, in an age where everything's kind of getting more automated and AI? Have we come full circle almost with all this technology? I remember what you mentioned in the book, the story about your local cheese shop,
Yeah,
which I loved, and
right.
I love cheese. And that was in your neighborhood, and how
Mm,
like the guy knows exactly how you
mm,
know, Mrs. Smith likes her cheese cut and what's going on with her husband and this and right,
mm,
the local fair
mm.
and it's almost like we've kind of come back to that in a weird way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I hope so. I do. I hope so. And I attended a presentation last week by a very well-known futurist who I really respect. He's a former tech journalist, so he's not a big hype man. He's a measured individual. He's a data-based individual, and one of the things he predicted, and his time frame was like in the next 5 years, was that there will be a cultural backlash to AI, and there will almost be like a cultural divide of people who have like devoted their lives to AI and the people who have completely, left the scene. Um, and I had a little snippet of this, a little glimpse of this. I was talking to um, a friend of mine, and we were talking about AI agents, and these are basically, programs with agency. They can do things for you. They can do tasks for you. They can manage your life and make reservations and, you know, and handle your business. So I said to her, well, to really connect in that way, you're going to have to turn over everything to these agents. I mean, they're going to have to know your life, and they're going to remember your life. They're going to have your passport, all your credit card numbers, all your contacts, all your phone numbers. And I said, you're going to have to give that up to participate in that economy. She said, I'm all in. I'm ready.
Mm.
I'm all in. And I'm thinking, not so much. So, I mean, it kind of gave me a glimpse of what's really at risk for all of us. And I could definitely see a large part of the population is just going to say, no, no way. Um, I'm seeing lots of little signs that are bubbling up, especially with younger people who are so lonely, who are so isolated.
There was
They've,
that
s-
Luddite movement, I remember, of the New York
yeah,
Times. Yeah.
I mean, the Gen Z generally today, and I mentor kids in Gen Z, and I observe this firsthand. I mean, they're online constantly, and they absorb their world through earbuds.
Mhm.
They All their culture comes through earbuds, and they'll listen to music by themselves, and they'll watch movies by themselves. They'll watch TV shows and everything through their earbuds by themselves, and there's no shared experiences. And I've got a new book coming out that explores that. It's called Audacious: How Humans Win in an AI World. And
Oh,
one of
looking
these
forward.
keys, one of these keys is is creating this thing called collective effervescence, this emotional contagion of awe that only comes when people gather. And so that's something AI can't do. It can never do that. We bring people together to think together and and celebrate together and absorb media. Companies can do this. Communities can do this. Brands can do this. AI can't do that. So it's still a huge opportunity for humans, and it's very important because you talk about You know, what if you think about emotional connection to the brand? I have some examples in this new book where it's like when you're in this activation with other people and you're feeling this awe and wonder, you're not viewing an ad, you're in the ad.
Mm.
You're in the emotion. And it's a huge opportunity. There's nothing more powerful than that.
That's fantastic. And that's a great way to wrap up here. I think that you're absolutely right. Community can be the last hope for branding, marketing, and humanity. And belonging to the brand, great book. Everyone should get it. There will be linked in the show notes. And I'll also put some information for where could people connect with you, Mark.
Well, it's very easy. You don't have to remember how to spell my name. You just have to remember businesses grow. If you can remember that, that's my website. You can find my blog. You can find my podcast, my blog, and all my social connections. The book we talked about today is belonging to the brand. You can find that there. All my books are on Amazon. So I'd love to hear from your listeners.
Thank you so much, Mark. And looking
Thank
forward to
you.
talking again when you have your next book.